I'm going to give the capsule before we start talking a little bit about your story and kind of what you learned building this company, Endeca. The capsule is basically you started Endeca in 1999, built the company through, as John mentioned, 2 recessions, sold it in 2011 for, I think he's not allowed to tell you the price tag, but it was a little bit north of $1 billion to Oracle. And now Endeca is part of Oracle and team is growing still in Cambridge. So John mentioned that you grew up in the Catskills, 16 miles from the grocery store. I'm guessing you walked uphill both ways in the snow to go grocery shopping. But what did you think you were going to be when you were growing up?
Well, we actually had snowmobiles. We would take the groceries up the driveway when there was too much snow, so we didn't have to walk it. But
nice.
So growing up in a rural area, you tend to become pretty self-sufficient. You can't just call someone up to show up and solve a problem. And sometimes they're mildly existential problems. You know, the power is out, there's no heat, and there's all snow, and there's no water, no this. And so you spend a lot of time in the garage working around machinery, and you build things. And so I thought I was going to be a machinist and have a really big machine shop with, lathes and milling machines and fancy welding machines, and that's kind of what I was excited to do.
Okay, so we fast forward a little bit. You wind up going to Princeton for undergrad. Mm-hmm. You worked, I think, in finance for a while before going to Harvard Business School.
Briefly, I actually worked in product. I was actually in operational companies. I worked in venture capital while I was in school. Worked for the Rockefeller Venture Group.
So what was it that made you feel, you're at Harvard Business School in the late 90s, and obviously the internet stuff is starting to get exciting, but what was it that made you feel or gave you the confidence that you could start your own company or that you should start your own company?
Well, I mean, I kind of had a history of it where, like, when I was in college, I mean, I built businesses like a loft business. I had a tuxedo agency selling tuxedos to people who use tuxedos.
There's a lot of tuxedo use in the Catskills?
That was at Princeton. So.
Oh, at Princeton, okay.
And the Catskills were always, I mean, you had to find your own work. So we did things like hauling stone or making firewood or building houses or bulldozing things. I mean, so those are all entrepreneurial things, just in a different context, right? But, I'd say when I went to school, it wasn't so much the internet bubble context. I came to realize I was kind of wired that way, right? And I think the ability to start a company is more about, it's a combination of profound creativity and insight in one sense and profound ignorance, in another sense. Because you'll always talk to people who will say, if they knew then, what they knew now when they were building that business, they probably wouldn't have done it, right? And that's the profound ignorance part. It depends on, is your makeup one to focus on what's possible versus what could go wrong, right? Depending on how much time you spend on each, right? The entrepreneur tends to be, 99% of their thinking is on what's possible, and then they'll come up, oh, there's this problem here. Oh, no, but I think I got a solution, and you'll be infatuated with that. And then there's another class of people, kind of the other extreme. This used to be a lot of my classmates that went to, like, McKinsey, right? Very sharp folks, right? But they would always come up with the reasons why things weren't going to work. And I couldn't even come up with a lot of the reasons they would. And they were right most of the time.
Really good at analysis,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
I can give you the long list.
Yes, and and with that analytical mind, you'd never actually try to do anything, right? Because you just see all the ways it's going to go wrong. And so that's what I mean. So if you don't, suffer from that analytical insight and just the creative part, you're all set.
Okay. Okay, and you clearly have a sense of humor. I think I wrote one of the first articles about Endeca in you started the company in 1999. I wrote about it in 2000. It was called Optigrab at the time, which Steve Martin fans will recognize as a reference to his invention, the glasses that you can take off this way. Tell me about, like, the first couple people you hired, because that's always interesting just to see how do you persuade and who can you persuade to join this company that has, that wants to change the way we search for products on the internet, but you have no revenues. I don't know if you had funding at the time. How do you convince people?
What's interesting is you really have nothing at the beginning. I mean, it's an empty vessel, right? It's just an idea. Unless, if you're talented enough to also be someone that can, write the code, et cetera, which I'd done that when I was a kid growing up on the mountain, but hadn't done since then. And so you got to get folks rallied around an idea. And you get people from all walks of life. And by hook or crook, there's some random relationship here or there. The other founder, Pete, who's in the audience, I believe so.
We have to ask you to... Oh, he's all the way in the back. underneath the sign that says time remaining 6 minutes and 47 seconds. So, okay, we better pick up the pace.
Pete had quit his job, was trading on eBay. We got together, worked on the idea. I reached out to a friend of mine I had worked with at a search company on the West Coast who got interested. There was another person I went to college with who was looking for career advice, who ran into me, and I told him about this.
Your advice was like, come work for me.
Yeah, well, maybe, but it worked out well for him. He's not complaining. And then there was another person who I asked for help on doing diligence on some technology I was looking to, to make part of this. Another person that was at UVA running a research lab that I tried to help him commercialize technology the year before. I asked him for some diligence advice, and he wanted to become part of it. And then there was one person that I found looking through the recent PhD list at CMU who had very specific expertise. I called up, met him. He quit his job before I had funding. He was so excited, even though I told him not to. Right? He just had very specific skills. And then I went to a couple investors and said, look, if this is the team, do you want to back it? And I said to the team, if this is the team and I have funding, do you want to join? This all happened over a week period in August of '99. And then money came in, like the first $1 million a few days later. And 2 weeks later, so everyone quit their job and everyone showed up and met each other for the first time. A few people knew some others, but it was really a team of 9 starting on day one that didn't know each other.
So there's lots we could say about what you did right at Endeca. I mean, obviously, not everyone in the room is going to spend 11 or 12 years creating a company that's worth $1 billion. But were there some moments where Endeca almost went out of business? Like you did live through the dot-com crash and then the 2008. Like what was the closest you guys ever came to just having to turn out the lights?
We had a couple existential moments. The most acute one would have been September 2001, right? We were trying to close a financing the Friday after 9/11. So you could imagine that was quite disrupted.
And you really needed the money?
We had about 5 weeks cash.
So in 5 weeks, you would have to turn off the lights.
In 5 weeks, there'd be nothing. Now, maybe probably the insider investors probably would have provided the bridge. That's the guess, but it was anyone's guess at that point. It was a very, ambiguous time. And then 2008, that was a very, it's one thing to...
Well, wait, what happened after 2001? I'm guessing
we closed finance. We literally, the firm, Ampersand Ventures, a fantastic group out near Wellesley, ultimately, they agreed to back the company on I think it was the Tuesday, September 4th, 2001, and they were going to close the following Friday. They literally were delayed 3 days. They had a discussion at a partners meeting. They said, nothing's changed about this company. We're going to do the deal. The partner that was stranded in Minneapolis because the planes weren't flying rented a car and drove to Boston to get it done.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that lets you know you're in business with good people, I imagine.
Absolutely. That's so important that you look for the ethics, character, and professionalism of who you partner with.
So what did you learn? You built this company into about 500 employees in a bunch of different offices around the world. Like, what did you learn just about the, either attracting the best people or keeping people motivated or when to let go and someone wants to go off and start their own company? There's a lot of questions in there, but we're obviously talking a lot about the people element of building a startup company.
What I'll probably, given the time we've got, the most important thing I could say is it's the responsible of the leadership of the team to set people up for success, right? If you just evaluate someone's performance, did they do something great? You have to, there's a lot of great talent. If you don't set it up for success, they're not going to succeed. And that's the role of leadership, okay? And that I learned the hard way. There were some very talented people that I didn't set up for success, okay? On the other hand, some places we did that extremely well. Like, for instance, we had this group called Special Operations, which reported directly to me. That was our vehicle for recruiting really high energy, top academic talent when we got to about 200 or 300 people, because we were considered a big company then and no one wanted to be part of the company. So we had this group, Special Operations. And the idea was we're going to throw really tough problems at you and let you work on them. And so there's a certain type of person that likes that. A lot of people aren't looking for what's the toughest job I can find, right? And so we found the people that self-selected for that. Probably about 20 people were hired into that role. And today, about 12 of them are founders of companies. And we set them up for success. We help teach them how to create a vision for a customer and solve their problem, right? So that's something I'm really happy about where we got it right and really set people up, not just then, but we teed up their careers.
All right, so I guess my last question is, I want to ask the question that you said, absolutely do not ask this question on stage at TEDxBeaconStreet, which is, I heard a story after Oracle bought Endeca. You guys, for years and years, had this mascot of the company that was a pufferfish that lived in a saltwater tank in the office, and you moved the pufferfish from one office to the next office to the next office. And then I heard that, and I wound up writing about this, but so Oracle at one point said, after they bought the company, that we have a no pets policy, and you have to get rid of the pufferfish. And so the pufferfish had to find another home at a senior citizen center. But what can we learn from the pufferfish story?
So the pufferfish story, what's interesting about it is the pufferfish for instance, that represented normalcy. That represented what people loved about Endeca. And the abrupt departure of the fish made them realize Endeca no longer existed. So it just became the rallying moment when some folks who they moved on because of that. But it wasn't so much about the fish as it represented.
But we should say, like, when you got off the elevators at Endeca, the first thing you saw was this giant saltwater fish tank,
absolutely.
And then one day it was empty and there was nothing in it.
Correct, and we had that fish from when we sublet a space from IXL, who just spent like $2 or $3 million building out their space, and then the internet bubble crashed, and in order to sublet the space, we had to buy the fish. That was part of the deal, and so it just became, we kept moving it around, and it became, the team became very fond of it. When a pufferfish would blow up, there'd be emails going around, people taking pictures. When there were parties, all the pictures always had the pufferfish inviting everyone to the party, this kind of thing. And so it became to represent kind of all the things people loved about the culture, okay? And I couldn't have predicted that was the thing, right?
That would send the signal that,
correct,
hey, we're not that
that there's
sensitive.
this continuous change, right? And there's pros and cons to the different ways of integrating companies. Oracle's approach tends to be, okay, it's closed, you're now Oracle, everything changes. And there's other approaches that could be more gradual, and different companies have.
Did you try to tell them not to get rid of the fish?
Some people certainly did. And the message was sufficiently delivered by them that I didn't need to.
All right, we should end on a note other than the fish, which is, what would you tell? There are a lot of young people in the audience. There are a lot of future entrepreneurs probably that will be watching this video. But what do you tell entrepreneurs before they have become entrepreneurs? They're a student, or they're working for a big company, or they haven't yet made the leap. Is there some piece of advice that you tend to give people?
Well, it's not even entrepreneurs. It's anyone, any student, is to take your time while you're a student, whether it's an undergrad or grad, and you're doing internships, find something that you love and are passionate about, right? Because whatever you choose to do, if you're passionate about it, you're going to do it great. Okay, and that's the wonderful thing about entrepreneurship is if you're passionate about an idea, you're building something. Even though you're working really hard, you don't call it work. Okay, and in fact, that's one of the greatest rewards about being an entrepreneur is creating an environment where people can be passionate about what they're doing and make a difference in the world. I'll get notes even to this day from members of the team just thanking me for giving them an opportunity to have done something so meaningful that because especially when they move on to something that's less meaningful. So it's really about learn enough about yourself to figure out what gets you ticking. Don't just follow the herd. Don't go into law school because you heard that's a good career. Find out if that's something you can be excited about. That, to me, is the most important advice, because if you love what you do, it's not work. I'm ostensibly working harder now after Endeca with all the different companies that I've helped launch, mentoring a bunch of entrepreneurs, helping them become successes, right? But I don't call it work. It's just what I do. It's what I love doing.
Well, and I love just to go back to it for a second, the litmus test you created of are you someone that can kind of see the opportunity and pursue the opportunity, or are you someone who can draw up the list of reasons why it would be dangerous to do X, Y, or Z, or why it's not a good idea? There kind of are two sorts of people in the world, right?
Yes.
This has been really great. Thank you for coming down from New Hampshire to be part of it.
It's always fun.
Thanks, Steve.